And while I don't think that it's very possible for most of us to ever completely get rid of this ego, as long as we're incarnated into a human form, I do believe that it is possible for us to tame it and to make it less of a dominant force in our lives by no longer having such an important role placed on being right and making other people wrong. One of the ways to begin to work at treasuring your divinity is to practice being kind rather than being right in as many occasions as you possibly can. And you have lots of opportunities to do this on a daily basis. Thousands of them show up in little tiny interactions in virtually every place you go, with strangers, with your children, with your spouses, on the telephone, ordering something in a restaurant, whatever. There's always this part of us that is the ego that wants to be right, that wants to make the dust rise from the earth with your swagger. And after a while, you start noticing it. You start observing it. As your own ego becomes less and less of a dominant force in your life, you start to notice how much other people's ego is playing such a role, how much strutting there is, how much posturing there is, how much bragging takes place. You can see it in body language. You can see it in the way that people deal with each other. You can see it in lines at the grocery store. You can see it when you're trying to get your ticket straightened out at the airport, whatever it might be. There's this placing somebody else in a position of inferiority, and you are here to do this for me, and I'm more important than. And it isn't said that way, but it's sort of communicated. And you think to yourself that all of these people, I do it all the time, all of these people are nothing more than me in an earlier time in my life. That this is the way I was. I see it in my past relationships. I see it in the way that I dealt with my children years ago and the way that I deal with them now. I see it in noticing that it's easier now for me to be kind and to suspend being right. And I'm right almost all the time. But I no longer need to point it out, except for right now, of course. But the idea that even if you know that when you're talking to someone that they're completely wrong, if you can suspend the need to point it out and instead just say something kind back in response, if you can just practice doing that wherever you are, those are points towards treasuring your divinity. It's not about worshiping more. It's not about getting down on your knees and practicing somebody else's orthodoxy. It's not about fitting in. It's not about memorizing verses out of the Bible or the Quran or the Torah or whatever. It's not about that. It's about practicing being Christ-like rather than Christian. It's about practicing being Buddha-like rather than Buddhist. It's about practicing being Muhammad-like rather than Muslim. Muhammad said, don't even harm any tree that has a green leaf growing on it. If there's a green leaf growing on it, don't harm it. Practice that. That kind of love and admiration for humanity. Live as much as you can those principles. And all it amounts to is simply beginning a process of moving out of the lowest levels of consciousness. The lowest level of consciousness is ego consciousness. Ego, some have suggested EGO, is an acronym for edging God out. That as you edge God out of your life, what you have done is you have separated yourself from your divinity, believed that you are those 6 things, separate from everyone, separate from what you would like to attract into your life, separate from God, your reputation. You start believing that this is who you are, and you start living this way, and you look upon your divinity as something that is out there that you'll talk to on at the synagogue on Saturday or at church on Sunday morning or whatever. And you'll practice during certain days, like we call, at the end of the year, 30 days of fasting, and this makes me, closer to God and so on. To me, it's about applying the principles of moving past ego consciousness. And when I see conflicts between one group and another, men versus women, when I see conflicts between people who are older and people who are younger, when you see conflicts existing between people who have one color skin and a different color of skin, when you see conflicts between people who wear a robe versus those who wear a yarmulke, when you see all of these divisions, and there are just endless numbers of them that we pigeonhole ourselves into, they are still the cause of virtually all conflicts on the planet. We still are dividing ourselves. We don't understand that this is a round planet, and on a round planet, there's no choosing up sides. There are no sides. I want to tell you something that I think will be very, very helpful to you. I want you to think about the troublemakers in your life. I want you to think about the troubled ones in your life. I want you to think about the ones in your life that are hooked on drugs. I want you to think about the ones who don't cooperate, the ones who don't fit in, the ones who perhaps are disrespectful, use language that you don't approve of, use substances that you find difficult, people that perhaps you work at. But mostly, I want you to think about people like that in your family. Now, I know that you think it's always somebody else, but they're thinking of you. And I want to tell you about how consciousness expands in every direction when you take these people who are your greatest teachers, the people who have come into your life to teach you how to love them through what it is that they're struggling with, what it is that they are going through. It's just, there's a need there, a need to be loved, that it's very difficult to love certain people under certain circumstances in certain ways, particularly when they behave in ways that are so troublesome to you. Anybody in your life who can push a button and send you into a frenzy is the person who's your greatest teacher. You know why? Because they teach you that you haven't mastered yourself at this moment. You don't know how to choose peace. In A Course in Miracles, there's a wonderful line that says, I can choose peace rather than this. Whatever it is, I can choose peace. I want to tell you about a woman, her name was Peace Pilgrim. Peace Pilgrim was a woman, an elderly woman who walked around the country, and all she did, dressed in white, was go into different communities and she would just talk about peace. That's all she did. She talked peace wherever she went. And in the process of talking peace, there would be no ads, and no one knew her name. She was just called Peace Pilgrim. I believe there's a website about Peace Pilgrim today. And in her journal, Peace Pilgrim, this woman who devoted her life to peace, talked about the Bamemba tribe in South Africa. And I want to share this with you because this could be one way of returning spirit to the place in your home where there's emptiness, where there's hurt, where there's pain, where there's fear, where there's anger, where there's worry. In the Bamemba tribe, Peace Pilgrim says, when a person acts irresponsibly or unjustly, he or she is placed in the center of the village, alone and unfettered. All the work ceases. The entire village gathers around the accused individual. Then each person of every age begins to talk out loud to the accused. One at a time, each person tells all of the good things the one in the center ever did in his or her lifetime. Every incident, every experience that can be recalled with any detail and accuracy is recounted. All positive attributes, good deeds, strengths, and acts of kindness are recited carefully and at length. No one is permitted to fabricate, to exaggerate, or to be facetious about the accomplishments or the positive aspects of the accused person. The tribal ceremony often lasts several days, not ceasing until everyone is drained of every positive comment that can be mustered. At the end, the tribal circle is broken, a joyous celebration takes place, and the person is symbolically welcomed back into the tribe. Necessity for such ceremonies is rare. Now, I'd like to think about that in terms of what I learned since the family meeting that I called a decade or so ago. If I were to do it over, I would place this beautiful child in the center of that circle, and I would have everyone talk about the wonderful things about her, about however, wherever we go, she just always thinks about the downtrodden. Dad, can we just take some donuts out to these workers, these migrant workers? They never get to have just some. Can't we just go over there? Come on, Dad, let's just take them some donuts. Can't we just do something nice for this person? I would tell them about the time that she went over on Mother's Day and bought a little trinket for her mom and wrote a little poem next to it. I would talk about how she made us laugh all the time when she was a baby, and with that little tongue of hers and the little words that she made up and that funny little way that she walked and her own sense of independence. And we would go on and on and on with this. And if we can teach those who are troubled, those who cause us pain, those who use language that we don't approve of, those who dress in ways, those who do things to their bodies that we don't think they should do, if we can just immerse them in a culture of acceptance and love, even if they're behaving in ways that seem so anathema to you, if you can just find a way to continue to do that, eventually that spirit has to raise, and your consciousness expands in every direction.
Learning to think from the end rather than about the end. People say, well, you're so productive, you get so much done, you've written so many books, you've done so many CDs, you've done all these PBS shows, you've done movies, and you know what? I basically think I screw off a lot. I don't really think I do that much at all. I mean, you can't even imagine. I mean, I take time to exercise 3.5 to 4 hours every single day of my life, every day. My kids will tell you. I swim in the ocean every day. I do yoga for 90 minutes, almost every single day of the week. I walk at minimum an hour and a half every day of power walking on top of all of the other things. It's hard for me to imagine myself not doing, because my imagination is so strong and such a part of what it is that is my life, that how it manifests isn't nearly as significant as that I keep my imagination sharp and focused. And I want to read you a little bit of Neville. It's a book, Moving from Desire to Wishes Fulfilled, by Neville. The great secret is a controlled imagination and a well-sustained attention firmly and repeatedly focused on the object to be accomplished. It cannot be emphasized too much that by creating an ideal within your mental sphere, by assuming that you are already that ideal, you identify yourself with it and thereby transform yourself into its image. Thinking from the ideal instead of thinking of the ideal. Thinking from the ideal instead of thinking of the ideal. Every state is already there as mere possibilities, as long as we think of them, but as overpoweringly real when we think from them. This was called by the ancient teachers subjection to the will of God, or resting in the Lord. And the only true test of resting in the Lord is that all who do rest are inevitably transformed into the image of that in which they rest. You become according to your resigned will, and your resigned will is your concept of yourself and all that you consent to and accept as true. You, assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled and continuing therein, take upon yourself the results of that state. Not assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you are ever free of the results. The truth that sets you free is that you can experience in imagination what you desire to experience in reality, and by maintaining this experience in imagination, your desire will and must become an actuality. Again, the truth that sets you free is that you can experience in your imagination what you desire to experience in reality, and by maintaining this experience in imagination, your desire will become an actuality. Now, all I can say to you about that is that it really works. The first part of this is the power of your imagination. The second part of what I'm speaking about here is thinking from the end. The third concept, after thinking from the end, is these words. If you're taking notes, I want you to really have them underlined. These are the words that Neville has spoken that really resonated with me. He said, you must learn to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Whatever it is that you have in your imagination, this is the only tool that you have for bringing it into reality, for hardening it from a thought to perhaps first an image, and then a condition, and then a event, and then an object. That your imagination is the only place that you can make all of this happen. If it's the weight that you want to lose, if it's the addiction that you want to overcome, if it's the relationship you'd like to fix, whatever it is you'd like to create, he gives some very specific examples of how this can work. Assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled means that in your imagination, you have created what it is, what you have imagined for yourself. You think now from that end rather than about that end. And now you assume the feeling of that wish being fulfilled. And where do you experience feelings? In your body. That's what the body is. It's the reservoir of feelings. They show up in your flushing. They show up when you get embarrassed. They show up when you get joyful. They show up when you get sad. You have physical manifestations of feelings. You assume the feeling of this wish being fulfilled. So what does it feel like within you to have this thing materialize? He makes a big case for creation itself, that you have really no control over the details. And you don't get to be a part of creation, he says, because creation is already complete. What you get to decide is what aspect of creation is going to manifest or materialize or show up into your life. That's what you get to do. You don't get to go out there and make mosquitoes or create flowers and all. All of that is being done by the great invisible Tao. What you get to decide is what extent of what is already being created and is part of creation that you are participating in, what share of it is going to manifest and be a part of your life. And you do this through the assumption of a feeling of a wish fulfilled. So that you imagine what it is that you would like to have or to be or to manifest. And you imagine this for yourself. And then what you do is you feel it in your body. And you ask yourself, what does it feel like? You almost have to think of yourself as having a cord that extends from your hip. And this cord can be plugged into one of two sockets. If you plug the cord into the socket of the material world, the physical world, at 20,000 cycles per second, you're going to get what the physical 20,000 cycles per second world has to offer. You're going to get problems, you're going to get fears, you're going to get worries, you're going to get illnesses, you're going to get accidents, you're going to get victimization. These are the things that happen when you plug into the material, slow, solid frequencies. If, on the other hand, you decide to take your plug and your cord and plug it into God, and it's really an internal metaphor that you can use at any time in your life, that I can unplug myself from here, because when I'm plugged into here in 20,000 cycles per second, I am feeling anxious, and I am worried, and my stomach is upset, and I feel sick, and I can't eat, and I want to take pills, and I want to go to the doctor, and I want somebody else to cure it for me. Those are the reactions to plugging in here. But when you plug into God, in your mind, when you just take this plug and you plug it in over here, you say, all right, God, I'm plugging into you, and I'm turning it over to you. Because I don't know how to handle this, but I know you do. Because you keep the planets in alignment, and you make the flowers bloom, and you turn a seed into a flower and an embryo into a baby. And I can trust an intelligence that can make miracles like that happen. And I know you have the answer. It's not like I have to say, oh, dear God, oh, my God. You know, I know that you can create the world, and I know you can do all of those things, but if you only knew my problems, you couldn't possibly solve them. And God is up there saying, you know, you're absolutely right. You know, it's not too bad to make a universe and to turn an embryo into a baby. But with the parents you had, my hands are tied. I'm sorry, there's just not much that I can do. I'm really sorry. You know. You have to really be willing to surrender and turn it over. And ask. And ask. And then create an intention. And then I think it's most important of all, after you turn it over, to remember that it's never between you and them when you have a conflict in your life. And I had read something from Mother Teresa called The Final Analysis. And let this ring in your hearts if you're looking for what to do to reach the highest levels of consciousness. Let this fill your hearts tonight. From Mother Teresa. People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. What you spend years building, someone may destroy overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you have anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it's all between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. And it was never between you and anyone you're in conflict with. Whoever they are, no matter how severe the conflict, it's always between you and God. Anyway. You can applaud because that's from Mother Teresa.
You just need to do. That's the key word, to do. Even trying is a myth. Without being nitpicking, you can't try anything. If I say to you, there's this pen sitting on this table in front of us, and I say to you, all right, what I want you to do is try to pick up this pen. Now, here we go, okay? Now, in reality, all of this trying is called not picking up the pen. It's just not up yet. And then when I do this and I pick it up, there's the pen up in the air. The trying is man's invention. It's the doing. It's the doing that is important. And yes, risk-taking is phenomenal. And I use the word myself. I have in a chapter in my book on raising children called I Want Them to Become Risk-Takers. And yet I don't believe it's risky at all. I believe the risk is only our evaluation of it. And that the real risk, other than putting your life in jeopardy and jumping in front of a moving train and foolish things like that, which I'm not talking about here, the risk is, there's several. One is that I will fail. All right, let's look at that. You can't succeed unless you're willing to fail. And you can't always be better than everybody else, because if you're a winner by having to defeat everybody else, then you'll always be a loser, because no one can always defeat everybody else, no matter how great they are. So that's not a good definition of winning at all. I've often talked about Babe Ruth hitting 60 home runs in 1927, the year he struck out more than anybody in the history of baseball, the same year. If you want to hit home runs, you have to be willing to strike out. And failing at something is just an opportunity, if you're looking at it the way I'm talking about. It's just an opportunity to see where you are and to assess who you are. And if you're having to look over your shoulder at somebody else to decide how you're doing, then somebody else's performance is determining who you are and how well you're doing. That's called competition. Enlightened people don't look at other people to determine where they are. They say that's the person and that's how they're running and that's where they are in their music development or whatever it is. And that has nothing to do with me. Where I am is how I decide to believe. Now, there's nothing wrong with getting out there and competing in a tennis match or in a golf match or in bowling or in anything in life. But to understand that it's not to evaluate who you are and how valuable you are, but just to see how you stack up to somebody else. That's fine. And when it's over, it's over. That's one big risk. And when you get to a point where failure is something you welcome, because that's how you learn. You don't learn much from success except to stay the same. But when you fail at something, it's a wonderful experience because it gives you an opportunity to grow. To me, that's not risky at all, even though to many people it is, this whole business of failing. The other fear is that I won't be liked, or that somebody won't approve of me. Well, the enlightened people are independent of the good opinion of other people. They are not functioning and running their life based on what others think, or say, or tell them to do, but instead on what my own inner lights tell me to do, with the morality of, as long as I'm not hurting anybody else, or interfering with anyone else's right to run their life as they choose, then anything that I do is okay. That's all morality is. Your right to swing your fist and flail around stops with my right to have my nose shaped the way I want it to be shaped. That's it. And so that's the only morality there is. And so you go out into the world and you are who you choose to be. And you know that some people will like it and some people won't. And the people who love you the most will probably dislike what you do the most, 50% of the time. And if you're trying to run your life based on what everybody else is saying or thinking or feeling, then you can never get anything done, because there's always going to be somebody, a large number of somebodies, who are going to dislike it. And every great idea comes from an innovator. And innovators are people who do things differently. They're not trying to please everybody else. Because when you think about it, if you try to please everyone else, if you try to be just like everyone else, what do you have to offer? If you're just like everyone else, you just have sameness to offer. It's your uniqueness. After a while, you begin to say that's just okay. And in fact, even in my own relationship with my wife, if we have disagreements now, there was a time if she would disagree with something that I would believe, I would be upset about that. Not immobilized or anything, but like, how could you not agree with who? Now, if we talk and she disagrees with it, I just say, that's her. That's who she is. That's what she believes. And she doesn't understand me, and that's okay. The greatest understanding you can have if you want to be enlightened is that no one will ever understand you because you're unique. You are a unique creation, and no one can ever get behind your eyeballs and see things as you do. You are always alone with who you are, and yet never lonely if you like the person you're alone with. So those risks stop being risks after a while. They're only risks to people who are just starting out on the path, who are just beginning to find out how easy all of this is and how perfect it all is. And the further along you go, the less risk there is. It just doesn't matter anymore, whether you fail or whether somebody doesn't like it or whether or not it fits in. Those things just don't matter anymore. And they become less and less and less risky, and just easier and easier and easier to just be what you know you have to be.
About a secret garden that's located inside each and every one of us, and it opens inward. And we can go there, and no one can take that away from us. I think I've spent the last 40 years or so writing books just about the secret garden, about the secret place that's within each and every one of us. I wrote this out this morning. If there is intelligence behind life, and all of the science tells us that there is the matrix of all matter, said Max Planck when he received the Nobel Prize for physics, that there is a divine intelligence behind everything. The matrix of all matter has an intelligence behind it that's invisible. If there is intelligence behind life, and there is every reason to believe there must be, then all of that intelligence is innate in each creation of that intelligence. Thus, universal mind, God, the Tao, whatever you want to call it, is complete and entire within each and every one of us. All you have to do is discover it for its power and perfection to be yours. So think about that. If there's intelligence behind life, and we all know that there is, all the quantum physicists teach us that there must be, then all of that intelligence that you came from, it's the spirit that gives life, said Jesus. The flesh counts for nothing. So all of the intelligence from which you originated is within you. So that God intelligence, this grand capacity that all of us have, is within each and every one of us. The problem is that we've all been conditioned to believe something else about ourselves. One of the most controversial things that's written about in Wishes Fulfilled is this idea where I say, over and over again, that we are connected to God, we are pieces of God. Yes, you are God. That you must be like what you came from, and you came from this divine place, and within you is the capacity to heal, to transform, to make anything possible that you put your attention on. That's something that, even as Jesus said, even the least among you can do all that I have done and even greater things. It's within each and every one of us. We all have this capacity, and that's our secret garden. It's like, but we don't use it, and I'm using it right now to overcome some congestion that I've had, to overcome this neck thing. Just recognizing that I have within me the power to be able to overcome those things. And here I am doing it. And have been doing this kind of thing and been teaching this my whole life. And I would walk up Peerless Street and up to my home at 20217 Moross Road on the east side of Detroit. And all the way home, I would think about Dickon and this secret garden that is in each and every one of us. Now, I'm talking about a tapestry that is in our life. I was in some kind of ascended master training of some kind from the time that I showed up here on this planet. Because the intelligence that I came from, because when you trust in yourself, you're trusting in the very wisdom that created you. And if you don't trust in that and start believing what other people have told you is your dharma or your what you're to be, and you're trying to live somebody else's idea of it, one of the things I say over and over again as I wrote this, and by the way, I wrote 58 of these. I wrote 144,000 words in the next 5 months. From June, July, August, September, October, November, I wrote morning, noon, and night. And I couldn't stop. And I was writing by hand, and I think that's part of the thing that kicked off this neck thing, because and my kids all came and, Dad, we're going to go do this, and we're going to do that. And I said, well, you guys all go do that. It's like a calling that is so profound and so powerful that not only did I write that book, and have we done a public television special on it, and I think that when you read it, you're going to be astonished at how powerful it is to look back at the tapestry of your life and realize that you've been in the same kind of training. T.S. Eliot, the great American poet, said, "We shall not cease from exploration. But at the end of all of our exploring will be to return to the place from which we originated and to know it for the first time." He was talking about death. I'm not. I'm talking about just I think that we can return to the place from which we originated, stay within our bodies, recognize our divine nature, and access it. All we have to do is decide that this is what we want to do. And I know that I incarnated into this world to do that, and have written 41 books now on the Secret Garden. Bucky Fuller, who I served with on the Hunger Project Advisory Council for 9 years, who died not too long ago, said that 99% of who you are, you can't touch, you can't see, you can't smell. 99% of you is untouchable, unsmellable, invisible. It is what Ken Kais has called your conscious awareness. It's what looks out behind those eyeballs. What is that? It isn't cells. It's some kind of conscious awareness that you are. And make no mistake about it, you've occupied a whole lot of bodies already. Now, this is not reincarnation talk. Although I don't know about this reincarnation. People ask me if I believe in it. I say, well, I taught in a junior high school in the inner city of Detroit for 4 years. And I saw those dead bodies come to life every day at 3 o'clock. So I believe in reincarnation, all right? Now, if 99% of who you are, you can't touch and you can't feel and you can't smell, then what is it? Who is it? Where are you? What is this thing called your essence or who you are? And where does it go? Now think of this. You were in a body. I have a little baby girl who's 11 months old. And we were all in a body that size. Well, it's only a body about this big. Got fingers only this long. You know? Got tiny, tiny little parts all over the place. I mean, she's only this tall. Now, is that her? Is that her essence? Because I have other children who are much older, and I am much older than that, and I can remember being 3 and being in a different body. Still me, still my essence there, different body, totally different, doesn't even look anything like when I was 11 months old. And then I was 13 and had a funny body at 13. But still my essence was there in a whole new body. Hairs growing all over the place that I didn't understand, all kinds of things happening to it, you know. Then hairs falling out of it later on, you know. Looking at those hairs that fall out and say, what held it in yesterday? You know, I don't know. I don't even understand that, okay? And so it's like who I am has been in many, many bodies already, all right? And that essence, you see, everything on our planet that is alive can never die. It can never die. Life doesn't die. It just transforms. It just moves on to new places and new ways of being. New ways of being. And the way of being that is the most transcendent of all is this way that comes from seeing yourself as love and only having that to give away. Only having that to give away. Let's say I were to stand up here in front of you and just visualize for a moment that I have an orange. And I take this orange and I squeeze it as hard as I can squeeze it, okay? What's going to come out? Juice. What kind of juice? Orange juice. Apple juice, any chance? Once in a while? Come on, now and then. A little mango juice come out of an orange once in a while? No mistakes, right? Never, no matter what. Next question. Everybody passes. These are easy, okay? Why? When you squeeze an orange, as hard as you can squeeze it, does orange juice come out? Because that's, not because it's an orange, because that's what's inside, isn't it? On our planet, when you squeeze something, what comes out of it is what's inside. Not too difficult, all right? Does it matter if your mother squeezes the orange? Does it matter what instrument she uses? Does it matter if you just had your period and then you squeeze an orange? Does it matter if your boss squeezes it? How about if your kids do it? Your kids squeeze an orange. Does it matter? Does it matter what time of day? Suppose they do it at noon, all right? How about at 4 in the morning? Does that matter? Whenever you squeeze an orange, the only thing you get out is what's inside, right? No arguments. Same thing works for you. Same principle works for you. It's a principle of the universe, all right? Someone squeezes you. That is, someone puts pressure on you. Someone says things about you that you don't like. Someone puts tension on you, whatever. Your boss says something to you that you don't like. And out of you comes anger. And out of you comes hatred. And out of you comes fear. Or out of you comes stress. Or out of you comes tension. Why? Is it because of your boss and the way they squeeze you? Never. Is it because of your mother? I mean, she really can be a pain sometimes, right? Is it because of your children? No. What comes out of you always when someone squeezes you is what's inside. This is the vital principle of being a no-limit person. It's so crucial to get this and understand that. That if you have any hatred in your heart for anyone in this world, or any anger, or any fear, or any of those things, it has nothing to do with the rest of the world. It only has to do with what you put inside. Now, how does what gets inside of you get there? That's the key. How does it get there? as you think. Only as you think. You see, there's no anger in the world. There's no stress in the world. There's no tension. It's perfect. We've already established it's perfect place. It works just fine. It's all flowing the way it's supposed to flow. The evidence for it is. That's all the evidence you need. Just look around you. Everything out there is a miracle. Everything, including you. There are no mistakes. It's all perfect. And everything that happens to you in your life, whether it's a trauma, whether it's a disease, whether it's somebody treating you in a certain way, there's a lesson in all of it. No limit people understand the lesson in life, and therefore celebrate the lessons.
Change from seeing yourself as separate to seeing yourself as connected to everyone and everything in the universe. And if we want to end violence in our lives and in our society, we have to learn to change our thoughts. Remember the dandelions? When I was growing up out in Michigan, we had these dandelions. The dandelions would have, at a certain time of the year, they would get all these little fuzz balls at the top of them. The yellow little flower part. I always liked the dandelions. I thought they were really beautiful. And then they have these little fuzz balls. Now imagine if you want to end the problem of dandelions on your lawn, and you see them all out there with all their little fuzz balls. So you go out there and you take a shovel and you turn it upside down and you start smacking all of the dandelions like this. And what do you do when you use violence to attempt to end the presence of these dandelions, which are problem for you on your lawn? Is they all scatter, and then in the spring, guess what you got? You got more. You got new generations of dandelions. There's such a lesson in that, isn't there? There's a great lesson that when we use violence as a means to resolve our disputes, whether it's individually with each other, or whether it's in countries, or whether it's in communities, whenever it is that we resort to that kind of not seeing myself in others, and out of this kind of a consciousness will emerge those people who will ultimately begin to get this. Because if we don't get it, like if we don't really get it, civilization as we know it will not survive. It will not survive. We have to learn that the people that we call enemies, no matter how horrendous they may behave toward us, there is still something of us in all of them. And we can figure out a way. Yes, we of course have to defend ourselves, and yes, we don't allow people to push us, or all of those kinds of things, but at a deeper and a higher level, Lao Tzu was asking us to go within and find that place of peace, and try to reach out to that, and help someone to make a U-turn. Those people can be reached, because they have the anchor of the universe located within them.
Embrace oneness by seeing yourself in everyone you encounter. Rather than having judgmental thoughts about those whom you regard as separate or different, view others as an extension of yourself. This will diminish self-importance, and it will unite you with what Lao Tzu calls the primal virtue. Letting go of ego-dominated thoughts lets you sense the oneness that you share with others. Thus you give yourself the opportunity to feel a part of the all-embracing Tao. Practice inner awareness whenever you feel yourself about to criticize anyone or any group. News reports designed to encourage your sense of separateness or superiority in relation to others can be a perfect time to do this. Find yourself as one of them. In situations where you're expected to hate an assumed enemy, stop yourself from these judgments and walk an imaginary mile or two in their shoes. Do so with all forms of life, even the plant world. See yourself in everyone and all creations, noting the Tao in this simple observation: we are the world. And secondly, take pleasure from what you possess without being attached to these things. Let go of your identification with your stuff and with your accomplishments. Try instead to enjoy what you do and all that flows into your life simply for the pleasure of doing and observing the flow itself. You literally own nothing and no one. All that is composed will decompose.
all that is yours will leave and become someone else's. So step back a bit and allow yourself to be an observer of this world of form. Becoming a detached witness will put you into a state of bliss while loosening your tight grip on all of your possessions. It is in this releasing process that you'll gain the freedom to live out what the Tao is always teaching by example. Do the Tao now. Today, practice seeing oneness where you've previously seen two-ness or separation. Feel the invisible energy that beats your heart, and then notice it beating the heart of every living creature all at once. Now feel the invisible energy that allows you to think, and sense it doing the same for every being currently alive. Contemplate these words from the Gospel of Thomas. His disciples said to him, "When will the kingdom come?" And Jesus said, "It will not come by looking outward. It will not say, 'Behold this side,' or 'Behold that one.' Rather, the kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the earth, and men do not see it. Today, know that practicing oneness thinking will help you see that kingdom."
So many people ask the question when they want to live a life of meaning, how can I do it when I'm around so many people who are operating at lower levels? You've missed the point if you're asking yourself that question. If you're living with somebody, a spouse, for example, family members, people that you work with, neighbors and so on, who are living at lower levels of energy than you cannot be dragged down by their low energy. That's not possible. That's not how the universe works. The reason that you feel dragged down is because you join them in their energy. You become within yourself what they are. In other words, the sentence, "You make me angry, you make me depressed by your behavior," really says that I see your depression, I see your anger, I see your hatred, I see your prejudice, and I'll have some of that too, and I'll hate you for hating me. And I'll be angry at you for being angry at me. Or being around you so depresses me because you're so depressing that you cause me to be depressed. That isn't the case at all. It's because that person's depression is something that you decide you'll align with. Now, if you take the reverse, if you take Jesus, who would walk amongst the prostitutes and would walk amongst the thieves, he didn't say, I'm not going to go over there and talk to those thieves. They took my sandals the last time. I'm not having that happen to me again. It's not, and I don't want to be around those hookers because, they're going to be tempting and so on. He didn't do that. When he would walk among the thieves would no longer want to steal. Don't you remember on Golgotha? At the crucifixion? He was between two thieves. Both of them were redeemed by being in his presence. Even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater. That's where you have to be. You have to be in a place, and remember that no amount of your depression is going to undepress somebody else. See, mothers know this. I watch this with the mother of my children, Marcy, a woman I love very, very much. And I would watch her in the middle of the night. I would be laying over here and she'd be here and the baby would cry. And instead of her saying, like so many people speak about, that crying really just upsets me and it really upsets her. Why do you keep crying? It's like, you're just doing it. You're upsetting me. You're making me upset. She didn't do any of that. She didn't say that baby's crying would make me depressed. What she would say is, I will bring my high energy of love and healing and feeding to you, and this will help you to raise your level of happiness. And it always worked. For me, a surly waiter is a wonderful challenge. My kids will tell you that. If I get somebody in there and you can tell that they're in a hurry, they're not going to be a little bit rude, they've been rushed and all of that, I know I can turn this person around. And I'll even make it a contest. Say, just watch. It's going to happen. I'm going to get this person turned around. And all you have to do is say to them, I know you're having a tough time tonight and you probably didn't want to have any more, but I said, you are so lucky tonight. You got somebody who came here to make your life as good as I can possibly make it tonight. Is there anything I can do to make this waiting experience happy for you? What's your name? Where'd you come from? You have an accent? What is it like for where you live? And within minutes of just elevating my awareness and being happy and letting them know that this is going to be a pleasant experience for them. And I do this, before you know it, they're bringing you free desserts. We don't have to pay for anything. Here's a complimentary pass. Come the next time. By the way, my mother works over at this place. Would you like to get a massage? Those kinds of things happen all the time. When you get your ego out of the way, when you dissolve your connection to this gross worldly world of conflict, and begin to just say, I can turn this around. The lady who cleans the toilets. Now, to me, anybody who in my life cleans toilets for me and changes my bedding and makes my room nice, that's an angel. That's not somebody that I deserve to disrespect. That's an angel who's come in and willing to serve me and work for very little. That's always, for me, that's $100. I seek out and I just say, I just appreciate you. And I do this before I go to sleep. I do this before I even take the room. And it's just, a $100 bill to me is a piece of paper. For her, and it isn't even what it does for her financially. It's like, what you do is you take people that, she looked surly, she looked angry, she looked like she didn't want to be in there, she looked like just another like white howley in here who's I've got to deal with. She was a lady from Mexico, and she just looked like she didn't. And when I just took her over and I put my arm around her, I said, you know what? I am so happy that you are here to help and serve me, and I just want to express my gratitude to you. You can take every incident of people who are operating at levels that keep them tied and connected to the gross worldly realm, and you can shift it. You can shift it. Because you practice a life of meaning is one in which you elevate your awareness to such a place that no matter who enters this realm, if they don't come with love, they don't get in. They don't get in. Inside of this shell of a body, this thing that I live in, inside here is my inner organs. And inside of those organs is an invisible intelligence. And inside there, in this little chamber inside of me, there's a sign that says, do not enter unless you come with love. So you can insult my body. You can be angry. You can even do things to my insides. But in here, where I live, do not attempt to enter unless you come with love. That's all I have in there. And you can do this.